Carré Culturel receives today Ms. Rachelle J. Gray. She is a Caribbean-American writer, a former editor-in-chief, a communication specialist, photojournalist, and a creative consultant. She lives between the US, Barbados, and Senegal, and she's presenting us today her debut novel, KINGSTOWN BURNING.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. So writing has been an important part of your career. How long have you been writing?
I have been writing for a while now. I did the math, and apparently it's 20 years, but it doesn't feel like that. I started off when I was in university, writing for the faculty and staff newsletter. That, for me, back then, that was a big thing because I'm writing for faculty and staff, and I'm a student, so I was like, wow. And then from there, I went on to, after graduation, being a photojournalist. I wrote for a few newspapers, magazines. I even was, as you said, editor-in-chief of a magazine, and now I'm at the point where I'm a novelist. Yeah.
It's amazing to be able to do something that gives you a lot of joy. And it is often said that writing is reading. Can you tell us about some of your favorite books or what you're currently reading at the moment?
Oh, wow, my favorite. Well, I'm not reading anything at the moment because I'm writing. And as a writer, that's one of the things for me. The challenge is I don't get to read as much as I would like to because I'm in my world and I'm creating my characters and I'm preparing like my next novel. So because I don't want to be influenced, I just want whatever is in me to come out. I don't get to read as much. But one of the books that has stayed with me would be the Cabral Negus. It's the Glory of the Kings, Glory to the Kings. It's basically the origin story of when Solomon and Queen Sheba met. And it's translated into English. I read it many, many years ago. Ever so often I pick it up. It's a beautiful, to me, it is the most beautiful love story. Queen Sheba heard about Solomon's wisdom, and she ventured out to meet this man who is this wise person. And along the way, there's an adventure. Of course, we know they made a child, and then he takes us on an adventure. So as someone who loves adventures and romance and characters that are rich and interesting, the Cabral Negus, the Glory to the Kings.
Thank you. So you've published a book, KINGSTOWN BURNING.
Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit about the story?
So KINGSTOWN BURNING is a story that is very, very close to my heart. It's close to my heart because it's set in the Caribbean, the Southern Caribbean. My family, my mom's side of the family, they're from Barbados. So a lot of it plays out there, but it also plays out in Kingstown, St. Vincent, which is an island not too far away. Many years ago, we had this relationship with St. Vincent where there's this trafficking, smuggling of ganja between the two islands. In the Caribbean, Jamaica is known as like being the top producer, but in the Southern Caribbean, St. Vincent is known as being the top producer of cannabis. And therefore, what that means for the people who produce the cannabis, the people who deal in cannabis, what I came to realize living on the island and living in an environment, because there's no way you can be on an island and not be affected, is that the narrative that was being pushed in the mainstream, you know, like these are horrible people, these are, you know, the worst of the worst are doing this thing, is not the reality that I saw playing out. So I whipped up a story that was inspired by what I've seen in my time. And hopefully, when folks read it, they will be swept away on an interesting like adventure, but also learn about something that they've had one opinion about, and now they're given insights that they would not have had before into this situation. So 3 women essentially get caught in the crossfire of a ganja war.
I love that you include a map at the beginning of the book. Could you tell us more about that decision? Map of the Caribbean.
Yeah, I put a map of the Caribbean to give, like, to center the story, because it's one thing to say, well, we're in Barbados. People know Barbados because people know Rihanna. And But that's it, you know. For a lot of folks, they're like, well, exactly where it is. And I thought the map would help. For Francophone people, they can say, oh, there's Guadeloupe, there's Martinique, there's Barbados. For folks in America, they say, oh, there's Florida. Yeah? Oh, we see there's St. Vincent and Barbados. So they can get an idea of where all of this is happening as it relates to where they are located in the world. So the Caribbean is basically, it ties South America to North America, and it just bellies and hugs up, you know, Central America, and we share the sea. And I just want people to be able to say, okay, that's where we are when they enter the story.
I love that. And in relation to the characters, they have these rich ties among them, and I was so struck by the names, and I wanted to know, how did you come up with the names for the characters, and are they reflections of people you know or characters you've made up?
Okay, so definitely one person that I would say that I'm fond of is our main character, Marley. Marley is just everything that, if I were a Marley, I think I would want to be. I like the idea of the fact that she has, it's a play on the word Marley because we're doing the Bob Marley. We're also doing the fact that Marley could be a girl or a boy. Yeah, and then it has this kind of, it tells you that she's not coming from a family that would do the traditional to name their daughter Marley. So it gives you insight into the kind of character that she is. And I really loved her name. It just came to me I'm like, what am I gonna call her? Marley. So that's what I did. With the other characters, Judah, the conquering lion of Judah, Zaire, I have fond memories. I remember when, you know, Congo used to be Zaire, and I always thought that Zaire was a beautiful name. But then you have things that really are very Rastafari in nature, because in Rastafari, how we name our children is that we put an I before their name. So that's why you have I am in there. Yeah, so I hearken to that. And just like the other names, if you're churchically Rasta, we have names like, it's a whole melange of everything that you can think of that will be culturally significant to the story. So the names just came to me, and I was inspired.
The cultural significance is definitely relevant throughout the book. And I'm very curious to know a little bit more about this friendship. So you mentioned Marley, you mentioned I am, and there's also Nubia. Could you speak a little bit about the role of friendship among these characters as they navigate through the story?
Friendship is very, very important. I write for the future, and I also write to impact the future and the present. And one of the things that I find, and one of the things that's very important to me, is relationships. Relationships, without them, you have nothing. Whether it's the relationship with your family, your community, the people you work with, your government, you name it, all of it, relationships, yeah? So with these three ladies, they have a friendship, and it's a real friendship. And I wanted to highlight the fact that there's real friendships out there, there are authentic friendships, that people can love each other, that love is possible, and it's something that can be practiced even when you find yourself in hard situations like how they found themselves in. So I think the situations that the adventure they go on and the challenges that they've met with, because they had the good, you know, in the Caribbean we say, if you start wrong, you end wrong. But if you start right, you can only end correctly, right? So one of the beautiful things is that because they had the good relationship to begin with, it helped them to jump over those hurdles and dodge those bullets and all that stuff.
Without giving out too much of what the story is.
Yeah.
So you are an Afro-Barbadian and you live in Senegal, Africa. Have you found cultural traits that show that we have common roots?
Oh, listen, it's so awesome being here, because it's like two worlds at the same time. There's the world which I completely am discovering and know nothing about. But then there's that world where I'm like, but we do that too. We have those plants at home. We eat that type of food. We love mangoes. the same way I love mango season and watermelon season. And oh, are those papaws? And oh, do you have bougainvilleas on your balcony as well? You know, and it's just like you start to see that there's so many cultural similarities when you listen to the music. I spent some time in the Casamance, and even being there, listening to the music and the culture and just being around the people, I'm like, okay, so Caribbean, right? You have to be like Caribbean. And they're like, no, no, no. You have to be like us. You're Senegalese. So I think it's pretty cool being here because I realized that there's a lot that we do have in common, but just because we don't speak to each other in the way that, you know, that would allow us to learn about each other, sometimes we don't know until we get here.
Speaking about things that we don't know until we get here, are you familiar with African literature? And if so, what are some pieces you've enjoyed?
Oh, wow. You put me on the spot. Yes, I am familiar with African literature. And one of the pieces that I really, really, really enjoy, I've definitely enjoyed Mariam Agba's So Long a Letter. I also started Ken Bugle's The Abandoned Baobab, and I found that to be very, very interesting, but I had to pause because I started back writing, so I was like, I'm gonna finish that. But I was blown away by her style and just her observations and how she just brings to life the environment, the village where everything started. And definitely one of the books that has stayed with me for the years is Kaffir Boy. I remember trying to read Kaffir Boy the first time. I was like, what is this? It's a story out of South Africa. You know, those aren't easy stories to digest. It's during apartheid. He's going through all this stuff. But yeah, and then I went back at it like a few years afterwards, and it was great. So like water for spirit, I mean, rituals, the list goes on. Yes, I do enjoy African literature. I find it to be layered and complex and interesting.
And you're also a teacher. Today, it is more and more difficult to get students to read. So how can you convince them of the importance of reading?
Other than telling them they're going to get a grade for it, they must get a grade. I try to show them that we're all stories, first of all. So stories are nothing foreign. We're each of us. We're a living story. So I get them interested in themselves so that they'll then be interested in others. And in that process now, you know, it's easier to open them up because now they've discovered things about them and they're curious, do these same things exist in someone else? So I think that, you know, you start with them first, the discovery of them first, and then go on.
Well, it's been such a pleasure having you today. As we come to a close, Rachelle, do you have any final words?
Okay, well, I would say thank you so very much for spending the time to read my book. Kingston Burning is very, very important for me. I really feel like as a writer, it is a very personal thing, and there are bits and pieces of you that you always leave within the pages. But then when you release your work into the world, it shows you something else about your world that you didn't know because it touches each person in a different way. And I'm just grateful for the opportunity to do that and then to just continue to keep just doing it and writing more. So thank you.
We look forward to seeing more of your work.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.